Good morning. Here are some thoughts about why presuppositionalism is mistaken and why it matters. So, Van Til and his followers affirm the resurrection as a fact, but they do not think that it is correct or God-honoring to reason from facts to belief. In other words, they don't think that Christian belief should be a conclusion. Now, there are some concerns that they'll raise with people that say that it should be a conclusion. They'll say, well, do you think that you can get there apart from the work of the Holy Spirit? No, I'm Reformed and I don't think so. I think that the Holy Spirit regenerates you, and that leads you to be able to love the truth, which distinguishes you from the demons. The demons may know that the God is one. They know it and they tremble, right? It says in James 2. So we're not going to be like the demons who reason correctly that God is who he says he is, but then that reject him. We're going to be different, and that's the work of the Holy Spirit. But the Van Tillians are criticizing that classical view. They're actually rejecting the view that God should be a conclusion of your argument. They think that there is something improper or impious about setting up the question of whether God exists as something that should be decided by autonomous human reason. You see, they're rejecting the classical position, and it doesn't hinge on this question of whether or not the Holy Spirit is involved in regeneration. The area that they disagree on with the classicalists is this question of whether or not God ought to be a conclusion to an argument. So why does this matter on a practical level? Well, the Van Tillian is giving a false account of how human understanding and faith work. And when you give a false account, that doesn't mean that they don't have faith. That doesn't mean they're not Christians. It just means that they're going to lack the ability to teach others adequately an account of what faith is. And as a result, they are going to teach a generation within Christianity that Christian belief has as little grounding in reality and in observation of reality as fairy tales do. You're making Christianity to be out to be a fairy tale when you refuse to allow God to be the conclusion of an argument. Now, many are going to walk away from the church because of this. I've seen it happen. Now, that's not to say that God cannot work because of our errors, but why should we be making errors? It's not to say that any of God's elect are going to somehow go to hell, but God works through intermediate means, and one of the means is that he calls his people to be faithful and to speak truly. We need to speak truly in a way that doesn't end up turning people that are in the process of considering Christianity away. So many will walk away from the church. Others are going to stay within the church, but they're going to look at their leaders and they're going to think, wow, if you're so committed to this Van Tillian, like Kantian idealism, Hegelian idealism, you must be mentally incompetent, and that's going to reduce their trust for their leaders. Others within the church are not going to identify the logical errors here, and they're going to embrace the logical errors, and they're going to end up becoming zealots for mental incompetence. Is that going to make the church look good? Is that going to make the church have an effective witness in the world? To the extent that the methods of seeking truth matter on a practical level, this topic of why presup is wrong actually does matter, because method matters. Presuppositionalism as a method of thought is what is destroying the world right now, by the way. I mean, Marxism is a form of presuppositionalism. It's not Christian presuppositionalism, but this attitude of presuppositionalism, this method, causes all kinds of problems wherever it is embraced. And it's difficult to combat it, because once somebody is on the presuppositional premise, like a Marxist presupper is, how are you going to reason them out of it? You can't. The conclusions that people reach without using reason, those are conclusions that they have embraced for some other cause, perhaps their feelings or their wishes, elevating I wish above an it is. And once they get themselves into that position, how are you supposed to use reason to get them out of it? Now, there may be other ways. You can appeal to people's sense of morality. You can deconstruct somebody's position. But ultimately, reason is one of our best tools. And so any defensive reason, any use of reason as a tool is going to be part of what you do when you persuade people. So don't let them steal that tool. Look, the Marxists are presuppositionalists. They just have a different set of presuppositions than the Christian presuppers. And if the Christians want to combat them in the sphere of talking about what's just or unjust, it's not going to go well for them if they're making the same error in principle on the issues of methodology. There's a lot more that we could say about it. If you want to, you can go to christianintellectual.com/presupp-consequences. It's presupp-consequences. And Jacob Brunton has written an outstanding article going into more detail about the danger of Christians who are otherwise rightly motivated getting this issue wrong. I'm Cody Leibold. Thanks for listening to this video, and God bless.